Welcome to Bases 46 Part 2. Once again, we're continuing this extremely important and highly detailed and very serious basis interview with Harald Kautz Vella, who's co-author of the book Dangerous Imagination and Silent Assimilation by Carla St Louis and Harald Kautz Vella. And it's very grateful to Carla for getting Harald to come over here to the UK in Wiltshire and record this very important interview. In part 2, we're dealing with ley lines, which are run or made. The ley line energy that we pick up is the black goo moving through the Earth's crust. And a very important type of matter, M-state matter. And in this part, Harald gets into Morgellons disease and the very important details which are in that. And this is horrific stuff. There's no other way of saying it. It's stuff we've got to know. There is a light at the end of this tunnel, by the way, but we do need to really get across the details of this stuff. And that's it for part 2. Join us again in part 3 for the final part of Harald's interview, where one of my cameras decided to suddenly drop out of record but still keep running for over an hour.
We've got my coffee mug in shot, which was donated to me by Miriam. And Miriam also designed the spiral logo, which we're using in the conferences, right? Now this is attributed to the Trinity, it's also attributed to water, the energy of a special kind of sacred water, as they call it, which comes from deep within the earth. Now, in order to try and bring people along with the scalar stuff we're talking about and the resonance of all that sort of stuff we're talking about, that's an ancient symbol we're talking about there, because they knew about this in the ancient past, and that's why what we're talking about is so important.
Maybe to explain the physics within the symbol, the first thing you need to know is that this fusion of longitudinal wave to scalar waves, it appears under defined angles. It can appear at 180 degree, but it also can appear at 60 and 30 degree.
And that's what this symbol has.
And this is exactly what the symbol has. And if you look at water vortices, you always find this beautiful symmetry in them. It can be a 3, it can be a 12 symmetry, but the subdivision into 3 is always part of it. And this is where, if you imagine those vortical structures being exactly moving exactly in this symmetry, that the field components exactly form the angles of 30 and 60 degree to each other. And this is basically the reason why the electromagnetic energy that is handled by the vortices, is delivered into the scalar realm and is up concentrated as scalar energy in the water. And this is what is making the water holy. Holy water is nothing else than water with a high scalar potential, because this is what biology is seeking and looking for.
Now this is also important because where we were meant to be having a conference tomorrow was meant to be at Merlin's Mound. And the point about Merlin's Mound is local archaeologist Maria Wheatley describes how the water at Merlin's Mound has got energetic properties because it's got that energetic connection, because one of our previous lecturers discussed the electrical aspects of Silbury Hill, and it's got a mica base, it's got some kind of capacitor oscillating property in there. And he was talking about it having some kind of biogenic field properties. Now this is really right up to what you're really saying, from what I understand.
Basically it's the combination of two things you find in nature. One is the special angles you need to compose scalar fields and to accumulate scalar potential. This is 30, 60 degree. And the other thing is that water tends to self-ionize. If you move water with a speed of 200 meters per second, it starts to glow and shine blue. And in the vicinity of 500 meters, every TV, every computer will blow up. Because it is starting to exchange current, exchange electrons, and split into water that is more H3O and water that is more OH, so that is charged. And then you have kind of flowing current, and you just need to visualize the speed this current can flow. If you have a normal current in a wire, this is like 8 centimeters per second. Now imagine you have the same current flowing with 200 meters per second. Imagine what field densities you can create. Yeah, this is kind of 10,000 times more than you can create with strong electric currents.
The interesting thing is that we're dealing with energy in the ground, and the water composition that you're talking about, Maria has lectured on, this special water which is deep in the ground, which is travelling at huge distances at vast speeds. Is that right?
Maybe we should take that step now to the Black Goo, because we have been running this transmutation of water to oil. If you do that for too long, the oil is turning black, and the transmutation row goes to precious metals. And actually, if you have oil that is turning black and is containing lots of precious metals, this is what Black Goo is from the chemical point of view. So for a while I also believe that ley lines have to do with water flowing beyond. But what I believe today is that basically the ley lines is Black Goo that is flowing through the earth, which
this is intrinsic to life. Is this right? Sorry, continue.
Maybe we should start with the Black Goo from the basics.
Well, we've mentioned the Black Goo. We've gone from the transmutation of elements using resonance and the colliding of the photons to creating a scalar wave, adding to a scalar potential. Is that right?
Yes, and this leads, if you have too much scalar potential, it is kind of moving the three-dimensional crosscut through the 4D reality from one realm to another, and then you get transmutation. And if you look what happens with water, if you transmute a mixture of water and carbon dioxide, you get, in the first step, you get a kind of plant oil quality. In the second step, you get Black Goo. And Black Goo is a funny thing, because Black Goo is something that contains all physical elements of life. You have the carbon chains that is kind of part of biological life, and you have the precious metals that are in a kind of antimatter state. It's called M-state matter in physics. It has to do with superconductivity, but it also has aspects of antimatter. It does not interact with other elements. It does not form chemical bonds.
I mean, we're told if you had antimatter and matter together, it explodes. This obviously isn't happening. So are you talking something shifted in dimension slightly? It's shifted by angle or what? Or
it seems to be shifted out of the dimension far enough that it does not explode. Something like this. It's hard to say, because there's no valid lab analysis to really find out what this is. Actually, the M-state matter was discovered because people had this in the lab, and it was impossible to say what it is. The only thing they could exactly say is atomic weight, and say, okay, this seems to be gold, this seems to be iridium, but it does not react like gold, it does not react like iridium. It's not possible to melt it and make a metal out of it. It always stays a white powder, and it does not connect with everything. And then if you heat it up, it suddenly disappears out of this reality. So it seems to be already half out.
Is this the kind of white powder gold that
yes, exactly.
Pyramids where people
It's
have gated up?
it's the manna where the Egyptian priests made themselves live for 800 years with.
But this was something to do with spin state. Spin state was high.
It has properties of superconductive materials. It hates magnetic fields. If you come with a magnetic field, it's fleeing from the magnetic fields without looking for the polarity. It flees from north, it flees from south in the same way. This is a property we know from superconductive materials. But then it has something that really seems to be moving up in the fourth dimension. It seems to be higher in scalar potential than normal matter.
Now we're talking about M-state matter.
And basically the idea that it is anti-matter, it comes from Hopi traditions. I just had this talk with a highly introduced spiritual man from the Hopi tradition. Because he addressed me because I'm dealing with a physical Black Goo. And he has the Black Goo from his oral tradition, from his tribe. And the Hopi tradition says that actually the core material of Black Goo is antimatter. And this is basically where the idea came from. It's for me. It's also new.
Right. Let's just change gear here. What is Black Goo? Now, there's different types of Black Goo.
Okay.
But also, it has a consciousness. So, from what I understand.
Yes,
and then we have the sentient fluid. That's good.
Okay. First, from chemistry, it is mineral oil plus gold and iridium. This means it is the same elements that have the function of being a biophoton attractor within the normal biology. If you look at normal biology, you have these gold atoms within the DNA as a biophoton attractor, and the biophoton is attracted by the gold, and then the field is carried and absorbed by the DNA spiral.
Okay. Now,
now let me take the bow.
Yeah. Because in the public domain, as far as most people are concerned, there was a major story in Nexus which referred to this stuff turning into gold or the molecules in the sea. So there's the form M-state matter, the form of matter is something that is produced by biology, but that is also produced just by vortical motion in transmutation rows. So my opinion, let's call it an opinion because I cannot prove it, is that when a planet evolves, the first thing that happens is that the mixture of water and carbon dioxide within the magma, within the core of the Earth, is brought into vortical motion by all the magma processes you have down there, and you get these transmutation rows and you create Black Goo. This has a very low state of consciousness until it is released into the oceans. This is what we call a black smoker. A black smoker is a kind of underwater volcano. Ask a geologist, he will say this is where life was first created on this planet, just next to the black smokers, because there you have all the components of what you need to create life. You have the carbon part and you have the precious metal part to process biophotons. And what happens then is that once you start to kind of bring these materials into the ocean, it is splitting into individuals, and it is splitting into repetitive development patterns, which we call now generations. But basically the basic physics is still the same as within the material inside of the Earth. You have a process of biophotons that is bidirectional. You have the ability of self-organization within the material due to this special kind of quantum magnetism developing between these photonic active precious elements. And what you then can picture is basically that everything that is happening within the biosphere with this physics, what you call consciousness, is still mirrored
as a kind of biophoton mirror within the Black Goo inside the Earth that is not dying, that doesn't have the separation into generations, that is not kind of reincarnating and creating children. This is kind of eternal memory and collective memory. And so basically everything that we experience as a biological being is mirrored and recorded in a collective subconsciousness, and in return this collective subconsciousness is supplying us with instincts. You can see that very clearly in animal, that when an animal is born, most of what he needs to know for the life is already there. There must be a source of information that is telling the animal what to do, how to do it, how to live, how to survive, what to eat, how to walk, how to run, how to communicate with each other. This is all there from the very beginning. And the only species that is kind of dropped out of this system of close bondage to Mother Nature, to the collective soul of the planet, that's us. And this is, if you look into mythology, something strange happened. We were kicked out of paradise. And now if you look into the records of history, what kicked us out of paradise? You can see this in beautiful ancient coins from Greece and Turkey. Next to the tree of life in paradise, you have two kind of stone structures of a typical form. It's called Shiva's lingam. And this is, if you look into the ancient scripts, this is a Black Goo schist, but not one that came from our Earth. Our Black Goo is liquid, and you find it in volcanoes, you find it in caves where ley lines are broken, and the Black Goo comes out of the stone. These Black Goo schists that are described in the connection with the tree of life came down from the sky, connected to meteorites that hit the Earth about 80,000 years ago. And it was actually a swarm of meteorites that hit the Earth. And this is something very unlikely to happen.
So this is the anomaly. Sorry, this is what is some people call the anomaly. It's brought a different set of mathematics in terms of resonant potentials to here.
It is what approached Earth back then was basically the physical carrier of an alien instinct. And this is
alien instinct.
Instinct. If you say that the Black Goo of our Earth is carrying the instinct of all beings on top of the Earth, including the human instinct, which is in the basics love and
in
empathy.
Essence, the seed of an alien race came here and is building itself here to exterminate us. We would know it as the predator. Is that right?
Yes. That's it.
And it has now achieved a state of biological existence, which means it must change all biological life here. So its biological imprint or instinct overrides everything here.
This is basically what we observe. It's a conflict between two planets, if you want so. Yeah. Two souls of planets. Mother Earth is dealing with an invasion of alien spirit, alien being, alien...
And so that is reassembling itself using our biology.
This is something...
It's using the physical material of our Earth to assemble itself, but it can only sustain itself on our life force.
Yes, exactly.
So our life force, they need us to manifest here.
It is a little bit hard to say who is controlling the entire thing.
In other words, who directed that stuff here to start with?
Who brought this Black Goo here? This is a technical project, because it doesn't fly out of a star, pure Black Goo, to hit another star or another planet. Something brought this here. Then we know, okay, there must be a species connected to this
And a consciousness.
invasion and a consciousness. Now the question is, does the species control the consciousness, or does the consciousness control the species?
Or was it the building blocks of that species to start with?
If you look into mythology, you find them as archons.
Yeah.
In normal everyday language, you would call it demons. And the people who deal with demons, we call them black magicians. So this is all connected to, let's call it skull and bones, and to the bloodlines who are into black magic rituals and ritual child abuse.
Yeah.
And they are...
And the ritual child killings to generate energy to sustain these creatures.
Exactly, because
in this physical
the species itself is not eating anymore. It is a very high developed species. It's spider-like, it's arachnoid.
Now,
and they don't eat, they don't physically digest their food. They steal biophotons, and they live on stolen biophotons. So what they need to do is to extract biophotons and energy from other species.
Now, this is very important, because one of the first people I interviewed called Ron Adams, and I go back to this guy, he died about 4 weeks after I interviewed him. Mm-hmm. But he had a terror of spiders, and the point is that he was at the Bentwaters base, his family was at the RAF Bentwaters base before the 1980 incidents. Mm-hmm. Because the 1980 incidents have been greatly disinformed. There was witnesses to actual beings that landed outside the base to tell us something. And then the whole thing's been sidelined by the Americans, who then were subsequently informed and so forth and whatever. The point is that his family were all being abducted by greys from the Bentwaters base. Mm-hmm. And they had a terror of spiders. Now, on my Energy 106 transmitter, I encountered a large scuttler, and we were talking about this in the car. And at Sky Television, I encountered a huge spider about 12 feet wide, and it fired something into my chest. Now, you had something fired into your chest. Could you talk about that?
Yes. Short story or long story?
The long story.
Long story.
I've run for as long as it takes.
I've been dealing with smart dust. Part component of smart dust are morgellons. These are hollow fibers, self-replicating hollow fibers based on a fungus, the morgellon fungus. And I did some research to this fungus disease called morgellons, and we had the great occasion to have a lady who suffered from the disease, and she was a really good photographer, and she made photographs of everything that left her body, starting from the fibers to the fruiting bodies that build up in the stomach and the lower intestines.
This is how true science works.
Yes, and she had 14,000 photos, and we just started to sort them by type, and then we looked what is most typical for one stable of photos, and then
Did she survive? Is she still with us?
Yes, she's fine.
Okay.
We found a remedy and healing for her. She's not suffering heavily from morgellons anymore. Anyway, we could reconstruct the life cycle of this morgellon fungus. And he does something really, really strange. He's a close relative of myco-insecticides. Myco-insecticides are fungi who eat insects, and while eating insects, they steal the DNA of the insect, integrate it into the fungus DNA, and when they create a fruiting body, like a mushroom, the mushroom grows in the form of the insect, and the DNA is integrated so precisely that even the wings and the chitin surface of the insect is reintegrated into the mushroom, and then he inserts his spore bodies into the eye of the insect, and they start to shine. They start to glow in a blue reddish light to attract other insects to infect them. So this is basically first step, a close relative to the morgellon mushroom. Now the morgellon mushroom, following this concept, should assimilate human DNA and within the intestines create human embryo-like mushrooms. This would be kind of a perfect copy of what we have in genetic engineering to create microinsecticides. But it doesn't reproduce a real human embryo. It is humanoid. It is about the same like a human embryo would look like after 4 weeks. But there are certain differences. The first important difference is it's not stealing human DNA. It brings alien DNA with it. These are small red cells which are completely indestructible. You can shoot them to space, you can burn them in a Bunsen flame, you can put them in concentrated acid or alkalinity. You can freeze them down to 270 degrees. Nothing kills these cells, and they reproduce in open space and free in nature. And these red cells carry also a highly developed DNA that then is giving the blueprint for the form and the morphogenesis of these mushroom fruiting bodies. And this morphogenesis includes sexual organs that are not mushroom type, but that are more animal type cells. They seem to work. So we have pseudomorphic mushroom aliens that have the ability to reproduce within the lower intestines. And then you have a second generations out of these sexual organs that at a certain point start to extract energy from the forehead of the patient. This goes like extracting energy.
What do you mean?
They have pain in the head,
yes,
and they feel that they lose energy from here, and they feel
the third eye.
Yeah, they feel that the energy flows to the intestines.
Is that extracting the soul of the entity, of the being?
It's extracting biophotons, basically. And now the question is, what is extracting biophotons? Something that is connected to these mushrooms in the lower intestines is extracting energy. And the next step is that the mushrooms are just aborted. They go out. And afterwards, they have the feeling of invisible crawling insects within the body. And I have to change the picture now.
Now, what was that picture you were showing just before we...
Yeah, I just have to find it, because this is a remote viewing picture painted by a guy who suffers from Morgellons. And he was able to visualize the beings crawling within his body. This is why the disease is called delusional parasitosis.
That's a real entity, though.
And this is the entity he saw within himself, with his third eye, rather, because it's remote viewing. And
this is very interesting, because a previous Bases interview, a young man called Alistair, he referred me to a former parasitic insect, how a small insect can get a larger one to basically walk into its own grave and be consumed.
Yeah, biology has funny ways sometimes. And, funny. This is also funny...
For instance, an ant could pull in a whole cockroach, and the cockroach would happily walk in and be eaten by the rest of the nest.
And these creatures, they do something very similar. If you look into the psychology of this Morgellon disease, the people who suffer from this, many of them have black magic experience in their youth, and they suffered. They are born victims in a way. They are born victims, and they identify...
Sorry to interrupt again. Yeah. The reason why I'm talking about the pineal gland is that would imply that it's looking back into the dimensionality of the generations outside the physical domain, but in the actual generational domain of the soul. Mm. So it's one, because Lisa Williams had the Black Goo in her, and she was referring to it as something which went through your DNA, looking through the DNA of the person, and then it left through a small thing in the ear as a bead of Black Goo, and then went into the earth. So that they look at there could be, what I'm saying is, they look as if they're traveling through the life source of souls into other dimensions across the universe.
I'm more to the basic physics.
Okay, fine.
I can understand what you mean, but I wouldn't be able to reproduce something like this in the lab, so I'm more cautious with it.
I'm trying to add different elements from different bases together of what I've interviewed in the basis that we are dealing with giant spiders, and we're dealing with things which are translating across universal dimensions, multiple universes.
What definitely is true, these species interacts with Black Goo heavily. If you bring Black Goo schist into the vicinity of a Morgellon patient, he goes up the walls, because this crawling of insects within his body, they all freak out. They start to multiply their effort or something happens.
What are these things? Because one of the things which is common to this is a multi-legged creature which moves through the body and emits a signal.
Physically,
yes, but it's actually known as a sort of a semi-translucent phase of matter.
Yeah, it's semi-translucent. It does not really interact with us.
It's not here, but it is.
Yeah, sometimes it is there. We don't have this in a row. Sometimes something strange happens, and when a creature like this dies,
it forms into
it ends up in our reality, and then things like this come out of the skin of a Morgellon victim. So this seems to be like a fragment of an aborted spider that ended up in our reality and collided with the physical body of the patient, and then it was just extracted by the body. So basically it would be interesting to have this piece and make a DNA analysis to find out if it is exactly the same DNA like in the little red stem cells. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it looks like this creature, this being, this species reproducing.
Okay, well, you just to go back, do you want to talk about the item which was inside you?
Okay, this is connecting us to black magic, and I was on a medical conference, and I don't like the picture.
Yeah, it's not good.
Let's get rid of this. Okay, this is more beautiful. I was on a medical conference, and I introduced the medical community to the life cycle of a Morgellon, including all the aspects. And when I finished my lecture, I just stepped out, and there was a man approaching me, and he was completely grey in his face.
And I said when you said that, he looks like somebody from the BBC, because BBC staff are grey and withered looking.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
And he told something that doesn't make much sense to me. He claimed to know somebody that I know and asked me if I'm still in contact. And he made sure to stand exactly in front of me. And normally I'm cautious with people, energy-wise. I don't go straight to unless I love the person and I fully trust him. I always try to stand a little bit to the side to avoid energetic interaction. And he made sure to stand in front of me, and then something strange happened. It was the feeling as if hot needles were flowing out of my fingers. I guess it was a massive loss of biophotons. He was intentionally lowering my scalar potential by extracting life force from my body. And when I was close to collapsing on the ground, something invisible shot out of his solar plexus. I could see his body react to the motion, and it entered my solar plexus, it smashed into the backbone, and then it flipped to the right side into the liver. I had a liver problem back then. My liver was under energetic and not really full there, so it could survive for a while in my liver. And I could feel it crawling for 3 weeks within my liver, then it changed side, and then it left through the lower intestines, which was all very, very clearly feelable.
But was this a physical thing? Or was
it was invisible, but what you could feel was the imprint of the fingers. Insect-like, like a spider, a leg that is just with a tip, the tip of the leg getting attached to you, crawling through you. The rest of the body was not interacting. But due to the sensation of these fingers, of these legs, I could tell the size, and this was about 25 centimeters. And
that's a big thing sitting on your side.
Yeah, he was filling my liver basically, and I don't know exactly what he tried to do within me. I guess he was trying to take control over my brain, to assimilate me.
Now this is important because the scuttler type things have been known to sit on people's brains, and the ends of the legs go inside the brain and go around the pituitary gland. Again, this is, or the pineal gland. I keep on getting confused between those two glands. But this is something which again is something to do with the soul, informational aspect of the soul, your essence which always lives.
Yes, and the trick why he didn't survive inside me, this is about heart and ego. If you have a mental structure where you identify with your thoughts, then you're a victim of those creatures. Then they can manipulate your thoughts and crawl into you and take over control. The moment you identify with your heart and produce lots of heart chakra energy within your system, love, green light within your system, or kind of red greenish light. But
the thing about that is it takes control of it. The homicidal maniacs which take control of governments and typically politicians.
Yes,
they're egocentric
exactly
nutcases. So they are the most easily taken overable.
They take over those. They take over black magicians, and a black magician is a person who makes a conscious deal with the demons. He is willing to open his system and feed them from their light in exchange for power on political level.
Now, my guess is that whatever this is as much an enemy to the so-called demonic realm of our dimensional harmonic resonant structure as it is to us. In the same way that the jinn, those energetic beings who were here before we arrived, they are making deals with these creatures, but they're under as much threat as the whole of the harmonic relationship of the reality and the universe that we exist in is threatened by this stuff.
For one reason, yes,
incompatible.
Yes and no. It is here for a reason. I never. Sometimes you come into realities that get scary, and I always say there are two questions. There's the why and there's the what for. And as long as you stay with the why, you stay in the position of the victim. And the moment you ask for the what for, what is this good for, you get out of the position of the victim, and the problem can be solved in laughter. And for me, this is...
You refer to that in how you survived a fight in Germany with it.
And the thing is, when we manage to deal with these creatures, the human that comes out of this confrontation is in full self-responsibility. At the moment, we have a small number of people who love to rule the world and don't care a shit about who is suffering. And we have 90% of people who are suffering out of free will because they don't have the guts to live self-responsibility. Yeah. And this is not a crime. This is a state that comes out of the Kali Yuga. We know what is right when we are connected to God. And in this Kali Yuga and this dark age, we are not connected to God. And then we don't have a straight feeling for right and wrong. And then people need to take decisions. And some people make decisions and others prefer not to. This is this game with victims and offenders that is developing in this time. And now we are coming out of the Kali Yuga, we are coming in the next golden age, we are reconnecting to the higher spheres. We have now the possibility to say what is right and wrong, and we need to identify with this heavenly will. And then we are in self-responsibility again, and these offender-victim games can end. And what these creatures do is they are kind of testing us, they are triggering this process. They are showing us that being a victim is not nice. And everybody who kind of is still preferring to stay a victim will not survive the process. But the moment you identify with your heart and you kind of take the force of the heavenly spheres into you as your will, as your energy, as your core of life force, then this is not a problem anymore, because they cannot handle love, and they only can handle victims. Because they're cowards themselves. It's not a very brave culture, these archons. They basically act with lies and out of the hidden, and if you confront them without fear and in love, there's not much left they can do.
Yeah, this is very important. I'm very conscious that a lot of the basis stuff is maybe scares the hell out of people. But it's love and a higher level of consciousness which is important here.
And taking it as from this size, we should be thankful for somebody kicking our ass.
Yes.
To develop into this state of being a loving, responsible being. This is something I want to get there. And I wish that mankind gets there. And if people decide not to get there, and they just stay somewhere on the road, okay, it's their free decision. It's not nice to look at it when it happens. The thing is, we actually know how it looks like when it happens, because it seems, if I go into a more far out stories, it happened to other species before. And basically what they do as tricksters, they manipulate humans on many, many levels, and this is leading to this disease called autism. This is kind of the mercury they managed to get into our veins. It is the chemicals in agriculture that are destroying our lower intestines and make our body being poisoned with heavy metals, glyphosate from Monsanto. All these components come together, and if we follow statistics now, in the year 2038, 100% of the newborn boys will be full autistic, and in the year 2042, 100% of the newborn girls will be fully autistic. And I have seen these autistic children taken over by demons. I had one travel from Croatia with a bus back to Germany with a young couple with an autistic girl, maybe 5 years old. She was on the chest of her father, and she was like this the whole night, and every 10 seconds she was screaming one alien scream. And if you looked at the face of this girl, you couldn't see a human anymore. You could see exactly the demon in this child. And basically this is what is going to happen. Autism is nothing else than extracting the human soul from the body, because this mercury damage in the body is so painful for little children that the soul cannot stay within the body. It goes out, it's dissociated, and the body is completely free to be taken over.
So essentially we're creating hosts for demonic entities to come into our reality.
We are turning ourselves into hosts for those species.
Now, these species allied with the alien goo.
This is one biology, yes. It used to be one. The alien goo actually is destroyed. It happened a few months ago.
What happened there exactly? That's a hell of a big statement to say the alien goo was destroyed.
Actually, I don't know exactly what happened. I know that prior to this event, many people started to deal with Black Goo, with their consciousness. And we created something we called Black Goo globally, which is a remedy to help people to reconnect with Mother Earth. So in one or the other way, there was a bridge established over those people who did this reunification with Mother Earth process. There was a bridge created, and Mother Earth managed to conquer the Black Goo deposits wherever they were on the earth. We know this from clairvoyant people who had this. They used to speak with Mother Earth from every now and then. And there were 3 days in November last year where Mother Earth just said, "Don't bother me at the moment, I'm busy. I'm busy converting the 3-chakra alien Black Goo to a fully valid 7-chakra system wherever I get hold of it." And after 3 weeks she was done, 3 days she was done. And I tested it because I have alien Black Goo from World War II deposits from the SS, bioweapon development of the SS, dealt with those stones. This is basically why they're moved through Europe completely free of empathy, because they dealt with those stones.
Where do these stones, are there samples, pictures or whatever?
Yeah, I can show you some of them.
What's that thing before you get rid of it? That image there you've got.
This is from the deposit, and
so how would you know that's dangerous? They're just like rocks, obviously.
Because the moment you approach those stones, your heart dies and you turn into an asshole. And this is something you cannot not feel. Complete coldness. When I met those stones first, I was in a hotel near to Untersberg in Austria, and I didn't get a room in that night because the hotel was fully occupied, and then I just slept in the car at 3 degrees temperature. And next morning I had a hot shower in the room of the people who got the last rooms, friends of mine. And then somebody at the reception of the hotel kind of started to talk a little bit unfriendly with me because I took a shower without asking for allowance. And I was this close to killing this person. And this is just not typical for me. You know, if I don't like a situation, I walk out. But I don't need to hold myself back from killing somebody, a woman. So this is something one can feel, and I didn't dare to go back to my family at that point. The only thing I did was grab those stones. You know, like in Africa, when you're bitten by a snake in Africa, it doesn't matter how often it bites again. The most important thing is grab the snake and take it to a hospital, because if they don't know the type of the snake, they cannot give you the antidote. Yes. So I took those stones and went to my doctors I used to work with, and we created out of these stones a homeopathic remedy to try to cure this state of soul I dropped into. And this worked in my case very nicely. So it took like, I think, 18 hours to reconquer my body and reconnect me to Mother Earth. And this was the most beautiful thing I sensed in my entire life, the reconnection with the spirit of this planet. She was thankful, she said hello, she dived through me. It is a feeling of a black whale diving through your body. Actually, this is a picture that is appearing in art and mythology. The black whale is her symbol she's using.
I mean, this is interesting, because one of the things that John Irwin refers to is the enemy of this predator that his team of 16 were there to find out what was going on way back in the 50s was Mother Nature.
Yes, she is. If you look at nature like it was, you had the heavenly spheres and you had Mother Nature, and they two kind of unite within the human in total harmony and balance. Now, what happens? Mother Earth was kicked out of the game and replaced by this artificial intelligence in the alien Black Goo. So now Satan is sitting in position of Mother Earth. If you look into the history of the church, this is why the female is associated with the demonic forces.
In the church, but the church was hijacked. I mean,
the church was very, very early hijacked.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know how far
There's a difference between religion and spirituality.
Definitely.
And it's very important that an awful lot of the individuals who've been exposed to these programs, these MK Ultra programs, a lot of them are going for high levels of spirituality. Going for God without the religion.
Yeah. Just for those who think these are normal stones, if you grind those stones, liquefy them with some kind of liquid and then add a magnet on top, the magnet is pulling out the Black Goo phase. And this looks like this. Just to be sure that this is not a normal oil schist, because you can very beautifully see the arranging this ability of the oil to self-organize.
That looks like an organism.
Yeah, it looks like an insect oil.
Yeah.
But it's active. We don't have films of this, but if you have two of those in a room, they realize that there is something of the same sort, and then it goes boom, and they stare at each other.
Organisiert, also formstabile Flüssigkristalle bildet und was auf Bewusstsein und Denken und auf sich gegenseitig durch intelligente Bewegungsmuster reagiert. Ja, also Formen annimmt, hin und her zappelt, zuckt. Und da ich in der Medikamentenentwicklung hatte ich eben auch Zusammenarbeit mit dem Eckhard Cyrian Scheller.
And then they try to get closer to each other, and if they realize they are caught in a box, they start to fight to get out of the box. Not just by pulling, but like trying to shake this way, trying to shake that way. And we also had...
and this looks like something that was in the BP blowout preventer. It seemed to be moving inside there in the BP oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes, it is the same substance, but in the Gulf of Mexico it is Mother Earth Black Goo. In Falkland, the reason why the Falkland War was fought, that was Mother Earth's goo.
Now this is important. You're referring to David Griffin's research, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's very hard to distinguish the two types, because also Mother Earth's goo did bad things to people, but if you look at it from...
Well, I think that's because the people were doing bad things to it. It reacted against...
No. It's a little bit different.
To the scientists who got killed.
Yes, it's a little bit difficult. If you look at Mother Nature, at Mother Earth, and if you see this beauty of the fully developed 7 chakra system with empathy and love, and this is your mirror. The moment you look into this mirror, you sense what yourself don't have. So seeing the full picture gives you a sensation of the things missing in you. And if you realize I'm only half a human, you stop liking yourself. And actually there is no evil. What we sense as evil is just missing aspects of the full harmony. So people kind of sense their own evil character while looking in the full potential of nature. This is what happened to the people in Great Britain. Some of them reconnected to Earth and had this empathy experience afterwards, and some of them couldn't stand themselves anymore because they realized how poor they were, and they committed suicide. If you look the opposite direction into the 3 chakra goo of the alien subconsciousness or the alien species, and you don't realize that this is a mirror, you're just infected by it and reduced to 3 chakras, because this is what a mirror does. And then you become evil. This is what happened to the SS and what happened with the deterioration from paradise. If you are a fully conscious person that is kind of consciously living all his chakra potentials, nothing happens at all. You look at the 3 chakras, you look at it and say, oh, poor you. Yeah, so many things missing in this system.
Victim, you become a woe is me, and you spiral down into...
If you're unconsciousness, if you're not conscious, then it's pulling you down to its low level. If you are aware of all your loving potential, you can deal with these black stones without anything to happen. We had people who just handled those stones and said, so what? Because they were stable in their energy. And so it is very...
Where did those stones come from? I mean, are there areas of Earth? Well, you're saying it's all been cleared now, so.
Those stones were in a mine that was used by the Nazis for research and underground facilities. Just leftovers from the ore transportation. I guess they produced big amounts of this liquid for technical applications. I guess quantum computers.
Now, you've heard of quantum computers in the City of London, the Black Goo and that.
Yes, the first...
Again, we've got 6 minutes left on part 2.
Okay, the first...
Maybe we want to just probably leave it there for part 2, and we'll talk about the City of London and that in part 3 before we start another subject. Is that okay?
That would be okay, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is fascinating, and it's... adding a whole lot of more sense, and it's giving a way out for people. That's the important thing.
Yes, actually, maybe I should come back to this moment where Mother Earth took over the...
Yeah. Now this gets into a very, I have to say, this gets into very new agey, woolly sort of touchy-feely sort of la-di-da stuff.
If you want to kind of find out what this means, one could say there is no inspiration to evil anymore. At the moment, there are only bad habits. This is what this incident changed for mankind. And you can see that this is true. If you look, for example, to Saudi Arabia-Yemen conflict. Saudi Arabia gave out the order to move in with troops to Yemen, and 10,000 Saudi Arabian soldiers packed their stuff and went home. And this order to conquer and destroy Yemen, it didn't happen. If you look to Ukraine, the fascist government in Kiev tells them kill the people in the eastern Ukraine. What do? They take all the tanks and all the heavy weapons and just drown them in the watering system of the farmers. To make sure that no tank and no rifle kills one of their brothers. And this is something we haven't had before. If an order went out to kill people killed on this planet, till today, and this is over.
And this refers to what was in the book about the Prussian education system to get people to just obey orders and don't question anything. But okay, we're out of time on that part 2, and we'll have a brief pause. And thanks to Miriam for the cup that we used at the start, and also for the design of the logo, which we use to show a higher level of consciousness in a positive way. The black and white spiral going into spirals of colour.